Welcome to the first Wits and Crits podcast with DM Thomas.
Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I am awesome. Thank you very much, Tab. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Looking forward.
I found you online making these incredible miniatures, and we briefly talked on the phone. I was like, wait, save it for the podcast. But no, I would love to hear like a little bit more about the story of how you got just so masterful at these creations that you do. I think it's in your basement or all around your house. But yeah.
Well, no, I'm happily married. In order to stay happily married, I need to keep all of my stuff in the basement.
Right.
And I started with a 3D printer many moons back because there's always a part of that in my imagination. I've always was impressed by like the Warhammer builds. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, you had those thick Warhammer books and those Warhammer campaign books, and they would show these vast tables of terrain. And in my mind, it was always, you've got to go and you've got to buy it, and then you've got to assemble it, and you've got to paint it, and so forth. And nothing was ever perfectly right. But I continued to play, I was always been miniatures on the tabletop kind of DM. And then the 3D printers came out, and my first response was always, it's time to elevate my game. So for my 50th birthday 8 years ago, I bought myself a very expensive 3D printer. I believe in spending and getting what you pay for, and I picked up a Lulzbot. And Lulzbot was a 3D printing brand, and it's still around, but they were local here in the Denver area. And this was a $2,500 printer. And the heads to replace were $500-$600 to replace the heads. And when I got it, it was it had all the high-end technical bells and whistles you could imagine, but it didn't have things like filament runoff monitors. It didn't have it leveled the base. That was the big thing. And it was one of those things like an F-14 where every time you flew it, you had to tweak it. So I do one print, and then I would have to tweak it, and then it would get the next print. So printing something big was always a real pain. And so I realized that because I have a patience issue, I decided to buy more printers. And so I started buying additional printers, and then I was always still having the problems. The Ender 3s were my printers of choice. The Lulzbot's still cranking out, but these little Enders are. So I learned basically how to use 3D printers from these failures and these mistakes. And then I discovered Bamboo. Bamboo A1s and A1 minis started filling the basement. And as the older printers started dying, I started replacing it with Bamboo. And now I'm up to 12 3D printers, which solves two things, right? Yeah, I've got 12 Bamboos are here in the basement, and one resin printer that now I'm still fighting with the resin printer. But it solves two problems, right? The first problem was if something goes down, I can still print. And the second thing is I can get stuff to the table really fast. My group and I, we play every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and it gives me about a week to get stuff on the table because I have a saying, right? Player characters are going to do what player characters are going to do,
right? And
you never know exactly what they're going to do, so you prep and you prep and you prep, and so I can get large things printed within a couple of days, and then I can get them painted within a day. They're not going to win any awards. They're enough, and so the biggest thing that we've got going on right now is the Keep on the Borderlands from the module B2 and the new Forgotten Realms has become their base of operations. We are playing first edition Realms maps with 5th edition rules. So this is before the Time of Troubles, and it's before the Horde attacks, and Citadel Rishaman is my Keep on the Borderlands. So people ask, are you homebrewing or are you actually building? And I use the maps and the terrain. But one of the neat things about first edition is that it gives you a paragraph description. And so you as the DM get to fill it with all this fun stuff. So we have currently the Keep on the Borderlands. It's 6 feet by 8 feet. And it's using the terrain called Throne and Ash from a company called Printable Scenery. I kickstarted this. It was about, I want to say $90 for all of this stuff. PrintableScenery.com. You can go there and you can buy it, and it's slotted like Legos. So when you're assembling it, they will actually slide into the separate joint pieces. So you have a male and female end. And so on a TikTok, I was able to show the process from building it from gluing foam boards together all the way up to painting and finishing those pieces. And what's funny too is that that particular board was needed to be ready to go in August, and I did a 7-day countdown. And on day 7, I decided to change the painting scheme. So I ended up with just a monster amount of work in a very short period of time. So I did a couple all-nighters, and of course I TikToked all of it, and my players went crazy for it. But now we have entered the Fey realm, and I did the tree village, which is that massive tree village from a designer named Fabio.
Oh, okay.
That was a huge hit. It filled a 12-foot by 6-foot, 12-foot by 4-foot area. And then now we are in the Goblin City. I borrowed heavily from Labyrinth, the role-playing game, for this dream state in the Fey realm. And they're approaching the Jabberwock's castle. And so the 3D prints really are an extension of the story. I have got a very vivid imagination, but I'm inspired by the 3D prints that I see that contributes to what shows up in the game, and then what shows up in the game contributes to what I hunt for.
Right.
And so it's this kind of combination of I know what I want, and then I look and see and find online, or I find online and incorporate it back into the game, which is where the Jabberwock castle came from. And I've been building. I'm probably, we're 2-3 weeks away from playing again, and I'm probably exactly 2-3 weeks away from finishing that paint job on it. But it's massive. Close.
So, going back to what you said, are you playing first edition? Did I hear that right? Or
we are playing Forgotten, all the maps from first and second edition.
Okay.
But the rule set is fifth edition.
Oh, okay.
And so because here's the thing, I love low magic environments. And I've debated folks online, which is an interesting thing to debate. I got to tell you, Tab, it's like, you hang your hat on something, and we're going to hang our hat on whether or not the Forgotten Realms is considered low magic or high magic. And I conceded the fact that 5th edition, even 4th edition, incorporated and turned the Forgotten Realms into a high magic environment. But when Greenwood had the Forgotten Realms show up in 1st and even 2nd edition, I would consider it to be low magic. The player characters are unique. The player characters are special in their ability to cast spells and do all of the magic stuff, rather than how it is now, which is every time you turn around, you got a magic item or you've got something. So I was heavily inspired by Conan the Barbarian. I spent last summer reading a ton of Conan the Barbarian books, and I thought that's the direction I want to go. So it's one of my characters described this campaign as more murdery than my other campaigns, and they are 7th, 8th level, and each of them barely has a magic item. So it's low magic, high swords, bloodshed, riding on the horseback, anything you can imagine Conan-wise. And in the Fey realm, they receive some magic items, but the debate is this Fey realm is in a dream state, so that they actually keep it or not.
Oh.
But yeah, we're playing 5th edition, kind of a combination of the 2014 and the 2024 editions, and then but with the 1st edition maps, because to me the Forgotten Realms is most interesting before the gods fell. When King Azun IV is around in Cormyr, and Elminster is a fairly well-known figure in the Shadowdale, and so forth and so on, rather than what they've kind of done with it now and modernized it and amped up the magic. But it's my favorite environment.
So with that being said, I usually play more of like a medium level of magic, and I like to follow the rule of 3 attuned magic items. I really think that has a very good balance in the game. Now, they could have more magic items, right? But only those 3, and they have to attune per the rest and all that.
Sure.
That fun stuff. But let me ask, what's your philosophy on that? Why do you like playing more low level, other than the fact that it's more fun for maybe you and it maybe brings that rarity? Is there something else to that you find more appealing in play?
See, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. And when you look at what influenced me most was the work of Tolkien, obviously, right? And then movies like Excalibur, and where the magic was subtle. And, the movies like Conan the Barbarian, where magic was subtle. Arnold Schwarzenegger's running around, and he has his little buddy magician who is able to do magic, but it's even more. It's not everywhere. If you can use magic, you're special. And so you carry that into Peter Jackson's stuff, right? is Gandalf throwing fireballs? No. Is Gandalf levitating and flying? No. He is a wizard of the earth, if you will.
Yes.
And so that's always kind of flavored me. And it's not that I think magic items are overpowered or magic items shouldn't be used. It's just that for this particular campaign, I felt that because I was so inspired by some of those Conan stories that I thought this is the direction we're going to go. There is going to be more introduction to magic because the idea was I created a Discord, and the Discord had, okay, here's all the tribes of the Endless Waste. And this is all Forgotten Realms lore from the Forgotten Realm Wikipedia, right? Mm-hmm. So I went through all of those, and some of them had huge descriptions, others didn't. So I thought, what's their relationship to horses? What's their relationship to each other? How are they, like, friendly? Are they warlike? I created a kind of a biography for each of the, I think there's 14 tribes. So the player characters could choose. Either they're going to be tribal and they're going to pick one of these tribes and their backstory is going to revolve around living in the Endless Waste, or they're going to come from Rishaman. And Rishaman is the Witchlaren run Rishaman, the secret councils, and it's just north of Thay. So there's this mountain range, and right on the east side of the mountain range is the Citadel Rishaman. And that's where the city goers, the more traditional Forgotten Realms inhabitants from Rishaman, go to kind of, it's like the frontier. And then you have the tribal folks also at the Citadel because it's frontier. And so you get this kind of clash. So inherently you have players who have an advantage when they're running around in nature versus the city folks who have an advantage when looking at runes and looking at magic stuff. And so the first act is in the Endless Waste. The second act is in the Fey Realm, and then the Queen is going to pass judgment on them. And of course, they did really well in the Fey Realm. They weren't murder hobos. They're going to get a choice to where they can go back. But what's cool is that the Witchlaren are this coven of witches that are all behind the scenes, Standard Forgotten Realms lore, and they wear these masks. And so they're very attuned because they're fighting the Red Wizards of Thay all the time. So they're very magical, but they wear these masks. And one of the player characters in his backstory, he is a hired sword for the Witchlaren to go hunt Red Wizards. And so I'm thinking about in the finale when they're fighting the Jabberwock that the Witchlaren are going to figure out where their agent is and try to rescue him. And I have 3D printed 4 masks that will represent the Witchlaren that he interacts with. I do have them.
Yeah, I want to see that.
You know, they are like, they're pretty awesome. Now, keep in mind, these are not finished yet, but these are all of this is going to be his main. This is going to be his main person.
Oh my God, dude. That is amazing.
So can you imagine when, because he's going to be like fighting the Jabberwock, and then this is going to come into his brain, and she's going to be pleading with him. But of course, we have to have the main bad guy, right? Mm-hmm. The main bad witch is going to look like this.
Wow.
And I see all the bird motif. There's bird motif on this, and there's bird motif here. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be really cool because I've got bird motif. So then I found this one, and I thought this one would be kind of fun.
Ooh, okay.
And then this one. So one is more raven-like, and one is more
my
owl-like.
Goodness, sir.
And so as I'm changing voices and talking like the Witchlaren or doing whatever, I can switch masks so that the player characters get a sense of who. And I could have gone to a Michael's and bought these masks, right? And then did all of that work myself. But for some reason, my addiction to 3D printers say I should do this. So I found some lacquer that fills and smooths. So I'm going to be finishing these up. But so the player character, I don't want to say he's sketch, but he definitely is a mercenary. He definitely is hunting for the gold. He's definitely looking for the kind of what he can get out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's going to be a choice, right? They can pull him out of this dream state and rescue him from the Queen of the Fae and take him back. But the Queen is going to offer to go back to the twins, go back to the Citadel or go to Rishamen. And so the player characters get to choose which direction they go.
That's fun.
If they go to Rishamen, it becomes this. Did you ever see the movie Crocodile Dundee?
Yeah, dude.
Remember the first half of the movie is we're in the wilderness fighting crocodiles, and the second half is they're in New York, and then the sequel they're in New York, and then they go back to the outback, right? And so my idea really was I've never done anything in the Fey realm, so Act 1 is the outback, dream state, and then hopefully the player character say let's go to Rishamen, and then my player characters who are not native are going to be more at home, whereas it's fish out of water for both sides of the table, which has kind of been fun. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. This is kind of a big question. And I've seen, well, no, it's a good talking point, I think. And it plays into what you were just kind of talking about. Like you said, you could have went to a Michael's and bought those masks, right? It is somebody that's spending more time creating outside of the theater of the mind, because all you really need for D&D is 2 or 3 people sitting at a table
and some dice
and a good story that you can play along to, maybe the character sheet too. That's like the most minimal setup, right? Obviously, like I like a nice studio. I like things on the wall. I like it feeling like we're in a location that's outside our normal world, and we're sitting down and we're playing, and we're really trying to get immersed into the character and the story. That's what I focus on the hardest. So when you see somebody take it to a level where maybe they don't have enough time, I'm trying to ask this in a very neutral way, and I know I'm going in a roundabout fashion with it. But,
shoot straight, my man.
Okay, so a lot of people don't have as much time as we do to dive so hard into playing this beautiful game. What do you think about artificial intelligence and AI being used inside of Dungeons and Dragons? Not in the sense to help you kind of organize your notes, but to make photos of characters, to maybe even build those STL files. Where do you draw the line with AI? And it's because it is starting to become invasive into this game now. So where do you think that's going to head?
Well, your choice of words is interesting, because invasive is a negative connotation, whereas a term like supportive or additive is more positive. And so here's kind of where I draw the line. All of the ideas that hit the table, all the writing that hits the table is me. I use AI to edit, and I use AI to proof, and I use AI to better organize.
Yes.
When it comes to images, I suck at drawing. And so I will go out. I belong to a couple of sites for my business. I go to Envato Elements. I go to FreePick, and I go to a free Adobe Photoshop, or not Photoshop, Adobe library, and they have really cool stuff. Usually it comes about 90%. And things like Envato and FreePick and even Midjourney, you can upload a photo and say, use this photo, except instead of making or put boots on this guy instead of having no boots. And so it'll tweak what those folks are using. But for the most part, if I need an image, a custom image, I'll use GPT to give me a prompt for Midjourney. Okay. And then Midjourney, I will generate the image. But here's the thing. It's for my table.
Right.
And even some of my published stuff, I augment with, but it's not my primary go-to. But here's the thing. I don't use GPT at all for mapping. I use Incarnate for mapping.
I love Incarnate. Oh my
I love Incarnate.
Yes.
Exactly right.
Pro Edition. I use it all the time. It's amazing. We have a built-in TV right here, and I can make my battle maps across it. It's great. And there's people that put battle maps on there for you to free use, and I sometimes scoop those up too. Yeah. And I go into Incarnate for battle maps. I go to Humble Bundle for battle maps, and I follow a couple of guys and gals on Patreon to get the battle maps. But if I can't find it, I
do it myself. Like you, I have a flat screen on the other side of this screen. It's 55 inches. I have a 72 inch on the wall. And I use a tool called DM Helper, it's no AI whatsoever. It's a free piece of software. And DM Helper relies on XML in order to organize your content. And so what I mean by XML, it has parent and children nodes. And so what I'll do is I'll say, keep on the borderlines, or keep on the borderland. And then underneath it, I'll say, key to the keep. And then I have personalities of the keep. And then I have rumors of the keep. And so when I'm typing directly into the tool, it allows me to kind of organize all those pieces. And so I'm not using AI to come up with stuff. I'm using AI to augment and improve what I currently have by making it better. I do a lot of publishing from the perspective of cranking stuff out and then putting it up on my Patreon, and I'm not good at that. I wish I was better at it. I've got just so many things going on that just kind of added up. But I use a tool called Home Brewery. I don't know if you've ever heard of Home Brewery before.
No.
But Home Brewery, it has its own markup, and it allows you to publish modules that look like the professionally published modules. And it uses hyperlinks, and it uses its own markup code. And what I've done is I've typed all my stuff into a Word document. I'll upload that Word document to GPT, and I'll say, turn this into code that works in Home Brewery. Then I'll copy and paste it into Home Brewery, and it's my content that's been formatted for Home Brewery, and it looks beautiful inside the Home Brewery tool. Right. So while I'm not using it to generate content, I am using it to augment and assist me in recording. I use this microphone. I record the sessions. Those sessions go into a couple of tools like Scribe, and it listens, it analyzes, it organizes, and then when my player characters miss a session, they can go to the wiki and they could look and read what happened last week. And so in a way, I'm using it as an intern. But here's where I draw the line, is that I don't use it for STL files whatsoever. I don't scan in images. I don't, because for me, if you're offering me a box of miniatures for $100, I'm going to buy it. If you offer me a bunch of tokens that you've hand drawn for $25, I'm going to buy it because I'm supporting a real human.
Right.
I've never bought a scanner, and this little dwarf guy. I've never scanned a little dwarf guy and created an STL file from it. I've never gone to GPT and said, give me an STL file of X, Y, or Z. That's just, to me, the sculptures that are being created by talented artists creating these STL files. I'm going to support them on Kickstarter. I'm going to support them here on TikTok. And so I'll buy their stuff because in a lot of ways it's cheaper, right? I could have gone to Michael's. We're talking about those masks, right? I could have gone to Michael's. Where am I going to find bird skulls? where am I going to find all of the decor? I mean, if I put something like that on the table, it's going to look like an art project.
Right.
If I find an STL file in the Bamboo Labs thing, give the guy $15, download it, I can have it printed in 4 hours, and it's going to cost me $3 in filament. You know what I mean? That's kind of the direction that I go. So for me, I'm not afraid of AI. I use AI all the time in my daily work. I use AI all the time but mostly as like an editor. And I do a lot of work where this document, a very technical document, needs to be in a 9th grade education level. So I'll write it, or I'll have the source files, and I'll use GPT to say, hey, turn this into a level or a 5th grade reading level. But as far as generating the content, not at all. That's all coming from up here. And from a visual perspective, sometimes I'll use Midjourney to create images for me or modify images. And I do like AI audio. I use a tool called 11 Labs. And 11 Labs will do voices. And when I'm building my learning programs, instead of hiring a real actor, I'll use the AI voices. Sometimes those get introduced as NPCs. I went through a phase where I was feeling very self-conscious about not using all the cool voices when it comes to being, one of those DMs that has all those voices. And so I experimented. I took key sections that an NPC would say and then added it to 11 Labs, produced the content, saved the content, and played it for the player characters. And the reaction was novel, but we preferred Thomas, and even my crappy voices, even the garbage that was coming, my players preferred that over the AI.
Same,
which just goes to show that having a real human involved in the process is always going to be better.
Right. Yeah. But, I always try my best with voices, and I've done a little bit of voiceover work. I'm actually about to do a nonprofit for the San Bernardino pet adoption place. We're doing like a video for them. I still got details, but anyways, I always just try my hardest with voices. We're going really deep, or talking like Mickey Mouse or whatever. I try my best, and it shows.
I'll go lower and slower,
right?
Lower and slower, or I'll whisper and change the volume of my voice. That's the extent of my voice, right?
Right.
You just heard it. Those are all my voices. It's a very one of those.
Hey,
but yeah,
it's genuine though. But back with the AI thing. Like I use typing up and AI stuff. The thing I have, and here's an issue you could probably relate to. As a dungeon master, you want there to be genuine surprise, shock, awe, and tension at the table. So if you are homebrewing your own story and not playing off a module, which a module's been written by dozens of designers all editing it together, and it's just you. So here's what I do with AI. I have it I vomit out everything. It might be, 2 to 5 pages, and I just type through, no spacing, no nothing. I just put it all out. I'm like, edit this, make it make sense, use a thesaurus and the way to replace some of the verbiage so it doesn't sound repetitive. And then at the end, what I'll do is I'll be like, can I get some feedback from this? Are there any holes in this? And that way I can have something to bounce that off of, because I don't always have another dungeon master friend to bounce that off of that we can sit down and talk for an hour or two. Usually they have lives too, but I'm trying to do a full actual live play, and I don't want there to be big gaps and holes. And I found out that half the time I do that, something does get popped up, and then it strikes another idea, another part of the arc or quest that they're doing. So in that sense, I don't know if you would call that it creating, but it'll actually bring up parts, and it has to pull from other source material. And I pull a lot from like Star Wars, anime, Lord of the Rings, The Labyrinth. I was a big fan of that movie back in the day. David Bowie. But that's one way I use it. And I think I'm walking a very thin line there where it's almost about to create something for me, but it's really just giving me that idea to kind of bounce off of. So that's one way that I get really close. The other thing...
I'm okay. I'm okay if you cross. I really am okay if you cross. And the reason why I say that is that when you're homebrewing, it's 50% of it is written out ahead of time, and the other 50% happens live at the table in the middle of the game.
I hope for 50%.
Well, but sometimes I'll make something up, and I'll make a name up, and I'll blah blah blah, I'll talk lore, and it's coming off my cuff, right? I mean, I know the realm. I have my 3 arc. I have what the bad guy's doing. I know what's happening in the world. But sometimes I'll put something in there that I think is cool, or that I saw something on an X-File that inspired me. Well, now it's 4:00 on Saturday. The players have gone 2 hours. I'm scribing up the game. How do I pull that back into my lore?
Right.
How does this object I just created, or the story I just created in that moment 2 hours ago, how can I loop that back in? So after I get the transcript of the audio, sometimes I'll go to GPT and I'll say, here's everything we've done so far. Here's what I introduced. Give me some ideas for tying these together to the main story arc, because it knows here's what's happening in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, because I built all of it and put it in there. So it helps me say, okay, well, you could do this or you could do that. I look at it as an intern, right? Just like you, I don't have, I mean, I'm in the Denver area, and if I wanted to, I could go hang out in used bookstores, hang out in game stores. I do that 2 or 3 times a month. And I was at Mind Goblin earlier today picking up, I special ordered some more Dungeons and Laser stuff. Woo! Like I need more Dungeons and Laser stuff. And so I special ordered some. I hang out with Mike at Mind Goblin. We talk for 10 minutes. And then, it's just, I don't have that network of other dungeon masters.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that I mean, I know this, I hope this doesn't come across as kind of haughty, but I don't have a pool of dungeon masters with the same level of experience that I do. When I've been playing since the mid 70s, I'm not about huge player backstories. I'm not about fulfilling every single one of the character needs to create this beautiful arc. I'm of the mindset where you came to the game with 4 characters already created because the odds are you're going to lose 1 or 2 of them in this adventure. And so your backstory, I'm a fighter who used to be ex-military. That was your backstory because the ogre is going to stomp him because you went into the wrong cave at the wrong time, or you save versus poison or die. And so you didn't get attached to the characters until they were around level 5 or 6. And in D&D 5th edition, even in some of the new content, the Forgotten Realms content says the player characters should be the center of the universe. The player character should have a special relationship to the world and be super unique. And I'm of the mindset of there's lots of really unique and interesting characters in the world, and these player characters have had a history, but I'm more concerned with the arc they're on rather than where they've been.
Right.
Because if you tell me that, like, I've got one of my player characters, he was visited by the gods and gifted his horse, and he's got this whole huge backstory, and then it's time to bail out of the caves, and he abandoned his horse. And so, you know, it's like, wait a second, your key element of your backstory isn't as big of a deal to you as you made it sound, so I'm more interested in where your character is going rather than where you've been.
Right.
I'm more interested in what happens at the table between the other characters than the relationship with your mom or your dad or some abusive, you know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, I see a lot of modern D&D players who drift to a game like Daggerheart, which is more story generated and more kind of, let's focus on what all the player characters need to do rather than the traditional GM running the world and the player characters figuring out how to live and survive in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I don't want to say hand holding, but there's just a different, those of us that have been playing for a long time approach the game differently than more of the modern players. Yeah. And I have 3 modern players and I have 3 old school players. And so it's a very interesting dynamic. And I'll even joke, I'm saying, I'll reach for my monster manual, my first edition monster manual. I say, this is the Beholder from first edition. And my first edition players are like, holy shit, that means Thomas gets to pick which eye stalk blows off instead of rolling a D20. Or like a white. First edition whites, you would lose a level. You could lose 5 or 6 levels in a fight with a white. And so when I threw whites at the player characters, my first edition folks were losing their minds. But all the conditions are restored after a long rest. So I can have this white rip out your soul and poison your mind. And then after 8 hours, you're fine. Yep. To me, there's very little threat of death. Now, don't get me wrong. I love a good story and I tell a good story. And everything I put on the table and all the AI stuff and all the miniatures, that's second. Okay, that's because in my 10-year-old mind, I wanted castles on the table. In my 15-year-old mind, I wanted more than just cardboard path that I would print off on my printer and cut out with, you know what I mean? Right. Now to actually be able to have it and have the grown-up money to be able to buy it is the issue for me, right? Yeah. And my wife, who's not a player at all, my wife is a beautiful, practical, my wife is not awesome a player. Person. Yeah, not a player. She's always said, "Why do you do these? Why do you put all this stuff together for these people? Mm-hmm. Why do you spend all these hours writing for these people?" And I had to think about it, because as DMs, right? I mean, how many times have your players left the table just applauding and hooting and hollering and thanking you for all spending 24 hours on building this 4 hours of gameplay, right? Mm-hmm. They just don't. They show up and they eat the snacks and they drink the beers and then they say, okay, see you guys next week, and they leave, right? I had to get it into my mind that I'm not doing it for my players. I'm doing it for me.
Yes.
The stories and the interactions are for the players, but having all the stuff and the painted minis and the 3D printers and the masks, that's for my enjoyment. Yeah. And that pivot, that switch in thought process makes it all worthwhile, because I'm smiling when I bring out the twins. You can probably see it over my shoulder, right? These beautiful twins or this castle, and seeing it is my joy.
Right. Right.
And if my player characters get a kick out of it too, great. If they don't, that's fine too. But my story is strong enough to handle the folks that just want to play theater of the mind. Mm-hmm. Whereas I get, my player characters will always know, I start describing something and then I'll say, why don't I just show you? And then everybody laughs and smiles because they know I've built something. But sometimes I haven't built something. And more importantly, sometimes I've built stuff that the player characters have never even seen because they were a player character and decided to go in this direction. I prepared to the left and they decide I'll go to the right, and I end up having all this crap. Exactly right.
Well, there's just different types of play. So when I go to my local game store and I actually get to sit down and play, and maybe that's once every other month, so maybe 6 times a year, I actually get to play compared to Dungeon Master. Get out of here. Dude.
Wow.
But I love dungeon mastering. I generally love putting people into my worlds and into the story. And I love to see that spark of intrigue in their eye and them trying to think through those challenges. But it's a different kind of play when I'm trying to sit here and we're doing an entertainment-based live play versus I'm really going to cut loose and make Ferlin Goodman or Gooberman the 99-year-old bard, you know? And that's where I get to have fun, and I really cut loose. I have a bunch of people because I did like a little bit of theater kid stuff, and like I've always kind of liked acting and all that stuff, and so I really let go. But I think that opens up the door for other people at the table at the game store too, and there's always that moment of quiet, even when we're at the actual live here. There's some shift where everybody's a little bit nervous. And then somebody starts to cut loose, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to start talking and having fun. I try to open that door as fast as possible, doing something silly, goofy to open up. But it's different when you're trying to do it for entertainment because you have these expectations, like you need the camera to look good, you need the lighting, you need the sound to look good. All right, everyone be on their mark so we don't, your sound doesn't get cut off. And so we try to make it, and it falls back into the AI thing. So here's something else. I'm sorry, I'm backtracking a little bit, but I wanted to make a second. I do want
to, I want to hear your points, but I do want to comment on the production value and the nervousness at the table. Most people get introduced to D&D because they've seen Critical Role.
And that's great.
These are professional voice actors and actresses, or they've seen 20-Sided Tavern. And so these people have tons of voices and ideas at the drop of a hat. This is their full-time job.
Yeah.
And so people come to the game expecting that same experience, and they're like, do I have to act like this? Do I have to be a theater kid and bring a character to this? Or can I... And I think that's where there's a big disconnect because what you just described of being live is a production.
Yeah. I really
regular old D&D. I mean, it's not as exciting as entertainment D&D, right?
Right. And I always try to say, be inspired to play. Don't be motivated to play as how they play. So be inspired to play. And some players are going to sit there and it's just the nature of the beast when it comes to this style of game. You're going to have, introvert, neurospicy kind of people sitting at the table. And they're going to be quieter. And maybe the only thing they like to do is when there's food or a feast around, my character is going to go over there and scarf it all down. I like to pet all the animals I see. And that might be the only thing that they like to do. But you know what? That really is a real character in their mind. And it might take a few sessions before they start jumping in other ways. And you have to set an example as an experienced DM or even a veteran player. It's really nice to when you open that door and you start being like really extravagant with all this stuff. That's why I love seeing like a high charisma player, veteran player sit at a table. I'm like, oh, we're in for a treat today. They're going to do something. And it's just a one shot at the game store. It's great. But the thing I was going to say is this is where I have found the most arguments with the AI. And I know we're backtracking a little bit. So I can't draw, and no one in my studio is a good drawer, right? And I hear what you're saying, and that's fine at like a casual style table where you go to sit down and play. But then I'm trying to set up a studio and eventually make this profitable enough so we can just keep building and growing it, right? And when money gets involved, there is a line that is set with using AI in Dungeons and Dragons. Right. Where if I have an entire pantheon of gods, I have major NPCs. It's not just a couple dozen, many dozen NPCs. And if I can run that through AI and it doesn't cost me a nickel, I get to invest more in my studios, these new 4K cameras, these brand new microphones and stands. But then I love artists, and we have had artists do our character art and do other art. But there is a limit to how much I can physically spend the means I am not rich by any means. I am not. I'm maybe barely middle class, right? But I have a dream, and this is it.
Right.
And I want to take this as far as I can go. I want to play the highest level of D&D in an actual live play setting. And I was completely inspired by Critical Role, 100%. And I'm like, I want to do this too, but I have my own way of doing it.
Right.
But when I want to take and use AI pictures and just pull these, so that way I have 60 pictures. So on my Stream Deck, I can press that button, and then that character and their profile comes up, and I didn't have to pay to get all those over $1,000, thousands maybe, just
thousands and thousands.
And I just can't put that out in the expense that I need nicer 4K cameras and microphones for each of my players. And, if I had that ability, I would. So I am going to use AI images for my characters, but I'm not going to type it in once. I'm going to sit there and the more major the character is, I'm going to type it in over and over until it's as close as it can be to what I have up here. And so that's where I have run into direct arguments with people that have literally told me, well, maybe you shouldn't have that kind of artwork on there because you're ruining our industry. And I'm like, I'm not trying to ruin your industry. I have my own industry. So that's where I do cross the line with AI.
I'm going to put my non-gamer hat on. I'm going to put my chief operating officer hat on. Okay. You and I, it's a Tab and Thomas Kickstarter.
Okay.
And we are going to create a world. We're going to create your world with your pantheon, and I'm going to write it, and we're going to have this really cool campaign environment for people to play in. We make $1,000. We sell 10 of these books on our Kickstarter. We have $1,000 to spend. Okay. Do we not have artwork in the book? Or do we clearly say these were generated by Midjourney? And in our Patreon or in our Kickstarter, we say we're using AI images for this. And if people don't like that, that's fine. I was a photographer 15 years.
I'm a photographer. 100%.
With film.
Okay.
I ruined the photography industry because I never shot with film and I never hand developed my exposures in a darkroom. Does that mean I sucked as a photographer because I used a Canon 1DX to do 16 frames per second? Because I used the manual setting so that I could underexpose a bride in a white dress in the snow? The camera is my tool. Film people were yelling at digital people saying, you've destroyed our industry. Well, adapt or die.
Yeah.
The
horse and the car.
My digital camera industry. Exactly right. It's horses to cars. It's manually having a horse plow your field versus a tractor. It is one of those momentous leaps that there will always be people who are afraid of those changes. There will always be people that believe that our water supply is disappearing because we're using so much water to process these AI. No, you're using just as much to use Google Docs and to use Google Spreadsheets as you are with AI.
Yeah, no one's handwriting. No one's writing by hand.
And no one's cursive anymore.
No.
We've destroyed the cursive industry. We've destroyed the calligraphy industry. We've destroyed the photography studio industry because we now have our digital phones that can take just as good of pictures.
Yeah.
And kids don't want to put prints on the wall. And so we used to sell a digital an application that goes on your phone so you can view your senior photos on your phone. The parents wanted prints. The kids didn't care. Each industry gets destroyed through a painful process, and there will always be naysayers to these pieces. I see it as a tool. If my work can get done faster and better using a tool, I will use it. I imagine there's somebody who hates hammers.
Affordability too.
Look at so we made $1,000. Are we not going to have artwork, or are we going to put some artwork in there? Let's say we make $1 million.
Now I'm paying somebody.
We can afford to spend $50,000 on hand-drawn artwork for our book.
Yes.
And to be honest, we would.
Yeah, 100%.
But, I work really hard. All of the ideas are mine. All of the creative are mine. Mm-hmm. I just can't produce the level of quality in an image or in a map. I mean, people would argue over Incarnate too. Incarnate destroy the hand-drawn map industry. I mean, we're always destroying something, and people are always going to complain.
Right.
And in modern America, we're always going to have somebody who complains loudly. My kid says anyone who uses AI, generative AI is, and she uses a long line of expletives. And I'm like, I can write a storyboard for my client my client supplies me with a PowerPoint, and I need to turn that into a script for an e-learning course, and it has all the notes in it. I take that client stuff and I put it through the AI machine to produce the script for me. Did I have it create content, or did I have it use this as a source material and put it together in a way that a subject matter expert can review it and make it accurate?
Right.
I think anybody who is so anti-AI just doesn't understand the idea of what the future holds.
Yeah.
Melania Trump, say what you want about the Trumps. She was hosting a tech conference and you saw her walk in with an Android next to her. Within the next 4 or 5 years, China is producing Androids with no thumbs for $1,200. Okay. Ray Kurzweil in the 80s talked about the singularity, and his argument was that the brain is great at storing information, but not recalling information. So if we can get what's up in here into a computer, I could type in and say, show me what I saw on my 6th birthday in 1970, whatever. And it will go back into my memory and pull it up. You and I are going to have a conversation, a business conversation, where we take our devices and we put it across from the table, and our brain is in these devices. And those brains are talking to each other, making decisions about what we need to do while you and I are talking about wives and kids and coffee. A light goes off on our phones and we look, and here's the decisions that our brains made. And this is all very real within the next 4 or 5 years. You know, Kurzweil predicted the internet hockey stick, right? This AI stuff is exploding in less, and it used to take, 18 months for technology to double. AI is doubling every 4 to 6 months. And it is mimicking human behavior in such a way. So do I hate it? Do I run away from it? I mean, or do I embrace it? And I'm an embracer. And for me, like I said, it augments my skill, not takes away from my skill. It's not thinking for me. I'm thinking for it. And then it's a dumb intern that I'm just telling it and fixing it.
And so
I have no problem with it.
I think we both agree then it's a wonderful tool, but we don't let it have the entire privilege of overtaking that creative process. Like
Google Maps.
I don't say make a astral elf in big tanky armor. All right, cool. That one will work. I give huge prompts to this, and I say I need gilded feathers as a shoulder piece armor on one side, and the other side I want spiked armor on the other. And I literally put in, there'll be dozens of details in one thing. Sometimes it comes out really weird and wrong, but other times it nails it perfect. And here's another thing. I have moved away from actually doing the super realistic AI art, and I've kind of come back to making it look more comic book, Studio Ghibli-ish, anime-ish. That's just the style I like. And you don't have to, and I love artists, and yet we had an artist in here, Vamp Bat. She made a bunch of our character artwork, and we paid her and we loved her. But man, I need money for the lights.
You need money to pay your bills and to pay the gas bill and it's just
and it's a process. Once we hit a certain point and we have those means, then yes, I want to have somebody on part-time staff that, hey, you have to make 4 to 6 of these drawings every week so we can post up. Absolutely. But yeah, I've
seen the guys, you are a weak DM if you have to use AI to generate the contents of a store. I have supported so many Kickstarters and authors and all these books. If I get the PDF and put the PDF into GPT and say, go and pull this, and turn it into a percentile table, am I a weak DM, or do I need something fast and cool that has me written all over it?
Nobody can pull up a D100 table off the riff. But at the same time, if you've DM'd long enough, you should be able, because it takes a while. If you're DMing for the first time, have that little bit of AI next to you to help you, especially if you need to look up rules and mechanics. You can't flip through the pages. And and Dungeons and Dragons, it's a time. We have only so little time, and if you're lucky, you maybe get 20 hours of play a month. You get one part-time shift at a job for a week and a month. So you don't have a lot of time to be a full, I consider myself a professional dungeon master. But man, I still don't have a lot of hours under my belt if you really start digesting how many hours you have. So to have that little bit of help next to you if they go into an apothecary and you just need to pull up 20 potions, what they do and how much they cost at the apothecary, boom, it does it. And you'd be like, yep, give me 1 sec, guys. Let me do that. And all right. Yeah. So you're looking for the rarest because that's what every player asks. Well, what's the rarest thing you got in the store? I'm like,
Exactly right. And when I'm running in a non-magical environment, how do I reward a Conan-esque character with something that's interesting that isn't magic, right? So you get finer quality this, or you get ornate that, or you get I created a Bob the Beetle, and Bob the Beetle was part of a trade, and Bob the Beetle, when you let him out, he finds secret doors for you.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so the player characters, hey, should we use Bob? Bob becomes this essence. Basically, it could have been a wand of find secret stuff. It could have been a ring, it could have been something, but in this world, it's a beetle, and he's totally transparent, and they used him once, and so 1/4 of him filled in with color. And now the player characters are smart enough to go, oh, you can only use him 4 times. Okay, so there's magic, but I've masked it in this kind of Conan-esque, non-magical environment. Am I inspired? Sure, I put like eight Conan the Barbarian books on PDF into GPT, and I'm like, give me something with a snake, or give me something with this, and it's pulling from the lore. I'm a man who doesn't believe in extremes in anything, right? Anybody who is extreme left or extreme right or extremely religious or extremely non-religious scares me, right?
Okay.
I'm a man of grays. And so I believe you should do what's best for you, and I'm not going to judge it because, number one, I'm not walking in your shoes. Number two, I don't know all of the stuff going on in your world that would make you say, oh, I need to use this. And so for me, it's like AI is a tool and it's out there. If you hate it and don't want to use it, don't use it. But don't get on my case or your case or somebody else's case for using it to summarize your games or just to use, it's like, believe whatever you want. Just don't expect me to believe it.
Yeah, it's
watch whatever you want. Oh, you watch X-Files? That's stupid. Right. Well, that's fine, but I like X-Files. I like that 90s theme and motif. Well, you should be watching this. It's that I think you mentioned a little earlier, people come to the table afraid because there's this idea that D&D is a game with rules and a winning and a losing. Because if I play Monopoly, I win or lose. If I play Uno, I win or lose. If I play chess, I win or lose. And so it's a completely different phenomenon for people.
D&D.
And so they get hung up on the rules.
Yeah, I just did
it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I just did a 3-part series, and I talked about this. I don't think Dungeons and Dragons is a story. I don't think it is. It has these aspects, I'm going to say. It has the aspects of a mechanic. It has of something mechanical. It has the aspects of a game. It has the aspects of a story. But in all truth, Dungeons and Dragons is a simulation. You are simulating, and you can dive into that world as a character. And in fact, I went so deep to talk about nested realities because you can play Dungeons and Dragons inside of Dungeons and Dragons. So it's a full-blown simulation.
There you go. Okay, I lost your volume for a second.
Oh, you're good. No, it's a full-blown simulation, and you're able to do these really, when people say you can do anything you want, within the dice rolls, yes, with passing and failing, you can attempt to do anything is how that should be said. But back to the AI thing, I don't think the problem is people doing that at their tables. It's when they see us creators online using AI, then they start kind of dissecting, because they know, man, I don't, because I respect so many of these people, but I feel like maybe they think there's more money in it if they're losing out on it. But the truth is I'm trying to build up in the right way, and there's a process to being built up in the right way. And the first thing you have to do is get discovered. And we're still not discovered. So we have to look good. And then as we get there, we will get the artists and art down. I swear to you. But I do support when I can, and I support my local game store and buying dice from them and all this stuff right here. We support, as a sponsor, Forged in Fantasy, and they make a bunch of swords and shields and stuff, because my expenses want to go into the studio. The drawings and stuff that you might see in the corner of the stream, they're much less to our project. It's a little bit less important to the visualization of what we're doing in here.
If you're creating all of these AI images, right?
Right.
You're creating all these AI images, and then you bundle them up into a package and you say, I created all of these by hand, and you sell them for $20. I have a problem with that. If you created a bunch of AI images and said, I created all of these with AI, but they are generated from my own imagination, I will buy that. But see, here's the thing. I'm not an AI proponent or opponent. I am wise enough to know it's going to have a place in everyday life. Right. Just like the internet, just like cell phones, just like automobiles, just like. I disconnected the landline to my home office last week, and we've had that same phone number for almost 30 years.
Oh, okay. How was that?
I finally disconnected it because everything is going to the cell phone now.
I never had one. Never had a landline.
When was the last time you used a fax machine?
Well, by the time I was 18, they were just, when I turned 18, 19, they had just come out with the first iPhone, and I had no cords, and I didn't even have cable. I used internet only, and I had Netflix and I had YouTube, and that was it. I was on my own at 18. I joined the military at 18. And so I had just that. And by the time I got out of the dorms and out of basic and all my training and everything, I was like, I really don't need to spend money on this. I like to play video games and online gaming, and I really don't like commercials, and Netflix had a good deal at the time.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be industry killers, right? And there's always going to be people that say VHS is better than DVD. And then the people that are Laserdisc are going to say Laserdisc is vastly superior to but there's always going to be naysayers. But for some reason, AI is causing such a fear and a furor that people are absolutely convinced the world is going to end because of it. And I'm like, well, it's going to be bumpy and it's going to be interesting because the genie's already out of the bottle, right? Governments are trying to retroactively put controls on it, but it's too late. It is gone.
Too late.
And I had somebody tell me we invented cloud computing before AI. And what we should have done is develop AI and then cloud computing, because anything that's connected to anything can talk to anything,
right?
Which sounds great. And then you put an intelligence behind it. Now it's evil and dark. I have in-laws that were absolutely convinced that Y2K was very real and the world was coming to an end. They built a shelter in their backyard and started selling stuff off. My wife and I bought our first property because someone was abandoning their stuff because they were convinced the world was going to end on January 1, 2000. And now we look back and we kind of smile at that. But I mean, churches and facilities were giving survival tips, and here's what you got to stockpile. And this fear mongering was a very real thing. And what happened? Well, it was nowhere near as bad as people thought when we did the right things to get to that point. 2012, the Aztec calendar is ending.
That's so ridiculous.
Oh,
so ridiculous.
Back in their bomb shelter, convinced that the world's going to come to an end again. We've always had folks that are the Chicken Littles of the world. The sky is always going to be falling.
Right.
Then you get guys like me that's like, hey, if the sky falls, we're going to just continue to exist and figure out another way of doing it. I don't believe that fear is the right response in any situation. And I mean, there's going to be a time when I carry this wherever I go. It goes to bed with me. I say goodnight to it. I put it to the side. I kiss my wife. I pet my dog. I'm out. When I wake up, I kiss my wife. I pet my dog, and I grab this, right? That has become so important. But in 5 years, maybe that was going to be replaced by a little android who's going to stand next to me and remind me of my schedule.
Well,
who's going to ask me what I want for lunch and then order it and have it delivered. It's a convenience, and it's not going to destroy the world.
I have a prediction, and I think this is how it's going to go. I think it's going to be just as big as the internet. I can just see that happening already. It's already halfway there, probably, just being as big and useful as the internet. But I think we're in that period where, love or hate, when the internet first came out, it was very much the Wild West. There were some very awful things on the internet, and there was an amazing part of being and having anonymity on the internet too, where you could create a whole personal being on the internet, go to threads like, I don't know if you ever remember like stuff like 4chan or just any other thread board that was just kind of on the fringes of, without being the dark web, the regular internet.
Right.
I think that AI is going to be the same way, that we are just now getting into like this Wild West and how it's established and who's using it, how we're using it. And then in years to come, we're going to look back and be like, remember when AI, everybody had it. It didn't cost anything. It was free. Everyone could do whatever they want with it and use it in all these different ways. And I think now we're just in that moment where it's a little Wild Westy. They're collecting data to see how people find it most useful. And then it's going to become a full blown service that you're going to have to pay for monthly, just like your internet. And I think that's my prediction. I am awful at prediction. I'm using bro science, but that's my own experience dealing with that kind of technological renaissance in similarity to the internet. So
it's not a world ender, it's a world augmenter. And there are certain people in the world
really good way
that want to have a strong opinion about something and make a lot of noise about it. And my response is, it's obvious we're not going to agree on this. And I end the conversations. I've had trolls hit my TikTok page and I've barely responded, or I've just deleted them and moved on without a response, because I'm at the point in life where I've seen a lot. I met someone at the DMV and she was saying, I'm in my last 30. She's 65 years old. And so she's describing the rest of her life as, I'm in my last 30. So I turned 58 on Monday. So I'm in my last 30. If you think about it, I'm in my last 30. Am I going to argue with somebody who, are you going to tell me that I'm wearing the wrong pants? I should be doing something with my socks. You reach a certain age where you just don't give a shit. I don't care what people, I will accept your opinion, but Keanu Reeves said it. He's like, I'm at peace with the world. If you want to say 2 + 2 is 5, I'm totally okay with you believing 2 + 2 is 5. My job isn't to convince you otherwise.
Right.
My job isn't to say that, I got to tell you, Tab, you're wearing a blue shirt on this podcast. Really unprofessional to wear a blue shirt. It's very unprofessional. I'm really disappointed in you that you chose to wear a Star Wars shirt to a D&D
You
podcast.
recognize it's Star Wars. It's so niche.
I did.
Yeah, some people don't. Some people think it's a beer shirt, and I'm like, no, bro, it's Star Wars.
I have a shirt that says "I survived White Plume Mountain."
Oh, nice!
And people will say to me, "Oh, where did you go? How high did you get? What do you mean?" No, it's a D&D module from the 70s, and there's a different. But to me, what's right for you is right for you, my friend. If you want to use AI to completely write your novel, which there's guys and gals out there doing that,
that's you.
More power to you. I'm just not going to buy it because I want a little more human element.
Yes.
And if you lead, I choose to spend money where it makes sense. If I can spend money on and produce more masks or bigger sets, I'll do that. But I don't need to do that. And I don't need you or anybody else to tell me that you're ruining the game because you're putting 3D prints on the table.
Yeah.
Well, the Warhammer people are pissed because 3D printing is replacing the miniature market, right? So they're doing all of these things to get. Didn't we just ruin the whole plastics manufacturing industry by making 3D prints so easy to have at the house?
No, not really.
But there's somebody out there who hates 3D printers. There's somebody out there who hates the fact that, Wizards of the Coast wants to add a pay per service for D&D stuff. Well, if you choose not to buy that, that's really cool, but nobody is putting their foot to your throat saying, in order to have a good time, you must do X, Y, or Z. That's why when people say, oh, I wish I was playing at your table, I don't have any of that stuff on mine. I always respond with, I wish I was playing at your table because your story must be so compelling. I need a crutch. My stories suck. I need to put a 3D printing thing on the table in order to keep my players interested, tongue in cheek, right? And so it's in my view of the world, if you want to do it, great, do it. But if you don't want to do it, don't stop somebody else from enjoying it. You may think Star Trek is better than Star Wars, which, when I was growing up, that was the biggest conflict, right? Are you a Trekker or are you into Star Wars? And you ended up with these fights at cons. Which was better? Well, Star Wars doesn't apply science, and Star Trek is too. Who cares? It's who cares, right? It's more along the lines of what works for you. And if you're going to tell me what's right or wrong on my table, and you're not even here participating, what kind of ego is that, right? You're not playing rules as written. Well, I want my players to have 4 magic items they can attune to: 2 rings, 1 on each hand, a suit of armor, a helmet, a shield, a weapon. Well, if you look at games like Diablo, right, you pull one of those objects and you can carry a bunch, but you pull one into those slots. Well, maybe you attune to that one, or maybe you don't need to attune, or maybe who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Well,
and there's guys out there who will say, "Oh, well, if you don't like the rules and playing rules as written for D&D, go play another game that has something." Who cares? It's a game.
Well, here's a question.
You can't even play Uno. I bet your rules for playing Uno are different than mine, and your rules for playing Monopoly are different than mine. Yeah. It's house rules. Every game's got them, right?
Well, here's something, because you talked about it at the beginning of the podcast, the newer versus older generations, and using this and kind of doing the crossover. Something I've seen very recently with older, and this is veteran players. These aren't the older, newer players. If
the grognards.
Yeah, if we have an older player who's relatively new at Dungeons and Dragons, and they sit down at a table and it's their first dozen sessions, they're definitely falling into that newer play style, more story forward. But the one thing I've noticed is when I talk to older players, generally, and I'm generally speaking, they fall really hard into the mechanics. And they fall really hard into like 3.5, where it's very math heavy.
Crunchy.
Yes, crunchy, exactly. And I know Critical Role definitely helped a resurgence in Dungeons and Dragons, and with 5th edition and how the designer set it up, they did something really smart. And obviously with sales and how it soared, it has been a success, at least for selling the books.
Right.
Why is there such a divide with that? I understand that there's the nostalgia of how you want to play, but I am also, and it sounds like you are too, it sounds like you play, and you're a great player. You kind of put both in, you mix it up. But why is that such a thing with older players? I know you're an older guy. I'm in my late 30s. But then I find guys that are mid 50s and older, and that's kind of where the cutoff is. Boomers.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get over or dive too deep into the psychology of it, or the right brain versus left brain.
Right. No,
but there's a certain degree of safety when you have a bowling alley. And I'm going to use the bowling alley analogy, and I've used it in a lot of different areas. But a bowling alley is, and the gutters are the rule. And so when you're playing type of game, you need to know where your parameters are. You can play within this alley, but if you go too far to the right, you break a rule. You go too far to the left, you break a rule. So we've got to play within those rules. And it's a very black and white way of playing. It's a way for someone to be very comfortable saying you are wrong and I am right. And for a lot of people, that's a mental requirement because they weren't a theater person. They were an engineer. At my table, I have 2 archaeologists, one with his PhD and another one who has her master's degree. And they go around the world digging up stuff, right? But they have to play by the book. They have governments to respond to. They have agencies to respond to. If they do the wrong procedure, they are punished for it. And in a lot of families, there is a right way or wrong way. My brother-in-law jokes about how there was a room in the house that kids couldn't go in, because it was like the museum room. It was this perfect, beautiful and even the on the carpet was done all the same direction, like a lawn being cut.
Oh my God.
And so there are people that thrive in that environment and feel safe in that environment because they can walk right up to the gutter and are comfortable with it. Me, I will never slow a game down for a rules monger or for a rules call. What I'll do is I'll say, how do you say it's supposed to be done? We're going to do it that way. And then after the game is over, I'll research the rule and we'll start the next session going, remember when we had this conversation? One of the big things that I had was holding actions. First and second edition, you could say, I'm going to hold my action. And at the end of the turn, if you didn't take your action, you lost it.
Yeah.
Fifth edition, when you hold your action, it's called a delay, and it's delayed until your next turn, until a trigger is created. So you can say, I'm going to hold my action until that orc sticks his head out from the door, and then I'm going to shoot my arrow.
Okay.
But if the orc never sticks his head out the door, you lose it because it's based on that trigger. And so I was, being an old school DM, I was like, if you don't use it by the end of the turn, you've lost it. And you get to go on your next one. And somebody at the table was like, no, the new rule says this. So I went with the new rule, researched it, and they were right. They're not always right, but I'm not going to slow the game down. I'm going to say, we'll do what you say is right just to keep the game moving. 5e, I've played entire 4-hour sessions where we're in one combat. Okay. Yeah. It's clunky as it is. And now we're going to take 15 minutes to dig through rule books to argue over whether or not you could do, you're doing it. Just do it. And then we'll look it up later. So that's not necessarily rule of cool. Yeah. That is not killing the flow. That's not killing the momentum of the game to figure out what the rule is. There are some games like Starfleet Battles, right? There are some games like Twilight Imperium that are rules heavy, and you cannot move your ship into this squadron unless this and that and the other thing and all those checklists, right? Right. Well, D&D is a little more fluid. I like saying, figure out what you want to do and let me, the DM, figure out the die rolls or the rule mechanics to make that happen for you, rather than I'm going to use this skill in such and such a way. But there are certain players and certain psychologies. Certain people are wired to be engineers and certain people are wired to be artistic. And D&D combines both, right? You got the crunchy engineers. You're going to have one at every table who knows the rules better than you as the DM. Yeah. I'm totally comfortable lawyers. With that. Exactly right. I'm totally comfortable with that. And 9 times out of 10, I say, let's just go with your interpretation of it so that we get past that and I'll look it up later. And that seems to work really well for me because my games are engaging and fun and moody and atmosphere. The story keeps going. The rules actually say that I can spend a sorcerer point to do such and such and such and such. Okay, tell me how that works in the story. Tell me how you're interpreting that in the story. Well, how did you know that? Where are you getting this information from? And they're good at kind of bringing that back in, but it's 5e is open enough and not crunchy enough. I would love more skills. I would love more skills that cover a wider variety of attributes rather than, sleight of hand is a pickpocket. It's doing some magic. It's also unlocking a door. And then if you don't have proficiency, what's the unique about being a thief in 5th edition? Right. 1st edition, 2nd edition, you had all those tables and stuff that you could do, percentile dice, all this fun stuff. Well, now it's a sleight of hand check. And if you've got thieves tools, you get advantage. That's not very sexy because anybody can open a locked door with thieves tools. It's just, so there's some of that stuff that I wish was back, but I'm not rules mongering it, and nor am I changing the rules. I'm playing rules as raw, but I wish there were some other things that the D&D 5th edition had.
Well, one thing we did when we first started Mythfits, we came up with our own skill system. We took 2024 had just come out. We read through all the books and we were like, hey, let's take the framework of 2024 or 5.5 and let's make our own skill system. And we ended up developing not only skills, we had hybrid skills. So whichever you had the higher ability score modifier in, that's what you could apply it to. Medicine was a good example of that because it could be wisdom or intelligence. But here's the other thing we did. You had up to 20 points you could put in each of those skills every level. And this was added based on your ability score, your proficiency bonus. It was a few different things. You would get a pool of skill points. Now, you couldn't put any more skill points into any skill equal to what your ability modifier was. So if your ability modifier was a +4, you could only put up to 4 points total, even though your pool for skill points for those was maybe 20. Also, too, when you reach a certain amount, like let's say you put 15 into sleight of hand, you get to use Mage Hand equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. Because who doesn't an invisible Mage Hand? Because what thief wouldn't want an invisible Mage Hand, right? Or
it's dexterous and can do cool stuff, right?
Right. So we added these perks as you got it. But that's the cool part about 5th edition and 2024, which I love. Those are my favorite editions. It's how I got started. And because it's a framework.
But Tab, you're wrong.
What?
You're wrong.
What?
You're not playing rules as written. Find a game that has a skill system that works for you and play it.
I make my own.
It's exactly right. See what I'm saying? Then you're not playing D&D. Then you can't go to a con and say, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? Are you and your players in agreement on this? Are you and your players having fun? Does everybody understand the augment? Of course they do, and they love you for it.
Yeah, and to make sure the players understand. You have to make sure they agree and understand. Exactly. A DM that forces their own opinion against a group that's like, no, we all thought it did this instead.
Right.
That's where it does get very toxic at the table. But I've actually never really experienced, except my first dungeon master, and he was. I did not like the first time. I've already told this story on this podcast, but the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't like it. It was in high school. It was 3.5. It was just before 5th edition came out. It was
Crunch.
And I hated it. I had to track arrows, my encumbrance, how much stuff I was carrying.
Right.
For the few sessions I played, we barely did anything in a story. It was really shitty. I didn't like it. I hated it. And I had to get convinced to do 5th edition years later. And then I was like, I love this so much. And now look where I'm at. And it didn't take very long. But yeah, you have to make sure the players are going to enjoy what you're going to do without spoiling the story. Yeah.
And, it's just, I picked up these Dungeon Crawl Classics DCC dice. And they come with a 3-sided dice, a 5-sided dice. If I want to make a sword special without making it magical, you roll a D24 instead of fun. You roll a D30 instead of, and so you end up making slight changes based on an item or a situation. And as long as my player characters get it, I had at the end of season 2, they had to storm Myth Draenor, and the King Azun was there, and Elminster was there. They had a big thing in Shadowdale. And they had they received a battalion. They received 12 members. So every player character became a general of 12 things. Okay. And so did I have them roll D20s for every single one of those? Or did I invented some rules based on Song of Ice and Fire and some Warhammer and some old D&D stuff to streamline the process. And the player characters, my guys, some of them loved it, some of them hated it, and we ended up in the middle of combat reverting to some more classic D&D rules because their troops were dying too easily. And I'm like, well, wait a second, you're being poor strategists. And then I had to remind myself, D&D isn't a strategic board war game. It's, I don't have exact measurements on the table. I mean, we use tape measures and some of those other things, but can you hear me or did we lost you?
Oh, no, we're good. I think the camera got bumped on my end. We're fine. No, keep going. Okay. I'm totally into what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah,
but you know what I mean? So I'm augmenting the rules with here's how we're going to kind of use this and here's how we're going to play this. And if everybody agrees, that's cool. And if there was a book that I got of it's supposed to make D&D bloodier, and I bought it and I shared it with the player characters. The book of not vile deeds, I forget what it is, but it comes with horrible spells and you get catastrophic damage, and when you're bloodied, you get. I mean, it just makes things really long-term ugliness. Right?
Is it the tome or grimoire of vileness or something?
That's vile deeds or something.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I shared it with my players on the Discord. I said, I'm considering using some of these rules. And 5 out of the 6 of them said, I want to play D&D. This is too much. Right. So I didn't use it, right? If I had forced it on the player characters, blood tables off of that, not as ugly and damaging. So now if they're bloody, they have to announce they're bloody, and I roll a d20, and they have a limp or their movement is halved or whatever until a long rest, right? Which is the magic be all end all in D&D 5e, is everything is solved with a long rest. So I've made it more murderier, but it's also well within the rules and the specs of the rules, because I have players who want to play D&D, and I've talked about it on TikTok. I've said, like, Xerox, and like when you I'm going to go Xerox something. Well, no, you're not. You're going to make a copy of something, or I'm going to use a Kleenex. Do you have any Kleenex? My nose is running. Well, those are brand names,
Right.
Kleenex is a brand name for tissue paper, and Xerox is a brand name for copy machines. I merged as a brand name for all role playing. Like, sometimes when you go overseas and say, "Oh, you want a Coke?" Well, whatever stuff they've got in the back, whether it's a local or a Pepsi or whatever, they're calling it a Coke. You go to the Midwest and I'm just gonna have a Coke, and well, what kind of Coke do you want? Well, I want a Sprite. D&D has become the catch-all, so that when people say they're playing a role-playing game like Daggerheart or Pathfinder, oh, I just play D&D. Well, which flavor of D&D? Oh, I play Pathfinder, or I play Call of Cthulhu, right? It's become this generic catch-all like Kleenex. And in Monopoly, when you have to pay $200 to the tax man, do you give it to the bank, or do you put it in the free parking, so if someone lands on free parking, they get that money, right? I mean, when you're playing Uno, everybody's customizing the rules that make sense for them, but we're all playing the same game. And as far as I'm concerned, it's collaborative storytelling, right? It is us jointly telling a story, and my job is to adjudicate what your direction you want to go, and then add to your enjoyment by creating realistic responses to your actions. I'm a big believer in consequences. I'm a big believer in, you screwed up and now you've lost this contact, or this town is now burned to the ground because you chose not to act. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like fudging dice rolls. I believe I have a player who's fudging his dice rolls, and it's bothering one of the other players at the table really bad.
Okay.
Because this player is slightly fudging dice rolls, I think.
Okay.
Is it a problem for me? I think so.
Oh,
is it a problem for me? Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that's a problem. 100%. Right? Yeah.
Am I stopping the game because of it, or am I giving and moving in directions that cause irrelevant? It's one of those things where I have to make a decision as a DM about, do I bring it to this person's attention, or do I just kind of let it slide? And we had a player in my last season 1 and season 2 did the same thing. And it got to the point where we had some really difficult rolls to make. And one of the other player characters at the table goes, well, let's let this character do the rolls. They always do really good on their rolls.
Oh, no.
And so it became one of those, everyone was aware of the drunk uncle who showed up at the party and made inappropriate comments, but you kind of loved them anyways. And so, but why? Some of the best things that have ever happened at the table is of a failure. You blew the roll, or you had this climactic moment and you failed. And if the DM doesn't reward the failure with a great wrapper, then it's just, I just blew my dice roll. And so I think we as DMs need to honor the failures, because they're just as valuable as the successes. The story is just as good with a failure as it is with a success. And that's what I think people who have that winning mentality, they're always going to want high dice rolls, because they want to win the game, even though the game itself isn't programmed that way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. If that was happening, what I would do is I'd pull that player off to the side and be like, hey, I think you're not doing the dice rolls right. I kind of play it off, right? I give him a half truth. I want you to sit next to this player, and I want you to roll in your tray. And I just want you to either have on a sheet of paper, or they know what to add to those until you're confident that you can do this by yourself. And if I talk to that player, the player that's helping them out, and they're just like, no, looks like they're trying to do it all the time. Or, after they roll, they're picking it up, rotating it, and kind of showing me a different number. I've seen that before. It's really gross. It's so gross. And it's
horrible. Right. And it's unethical.
And then I kick the player out. I'd be like, sorry, buddy, we don't do that at the table. We tried to go about it the nice way, but you still wanted to proceed in this way. I think I'm just going to kill your character off today or at the next session. And you can go find maybe a table where that's okay. But you have to also explain, especially to new players, if new players have never gotten this talk, this is a talk for session 0 new players, which I'm not that big of a fan of session 0. That's another talk. But for brand new players,
it's a whole other TED talk, whole other Oprah.
For brand new players that don't know like what a D20 dice is, yes, you have to have a session 0. The session 0 talk that you have to have with new players is it is okay to fail, because the best story moments are knowing that your party is behind you and they're not going to blame you, and you're going to work your way through this. And even if that character dies per se, and that's really it, you died knowing that you helped and did your best to help your party. It's still a great story. And that's that talk you always have to have.
Yeah, and I agree. Session 0 for me is a great way of introducing the players to each other. It's a great way of setting the tone of the campaign.
I don't like that.
But that's what my Discord is for. I don't do lore dumps in Session 0. That's what the Discord is for.
I do that. I think we're
here's
tracking.
how combat works, and here's how this works, and it's mechanics, because 2 of my players, this is their first time ever playing D&D. Too much. So Session 0, I don't buy into the, what do they call it, flags and triggers and all that other stuff. I mean, I don't have children at the table. We're all adults. And if you tell me that spiders really freak you out, I'm not going to actively include spiders or anything horrible.
I throw spiders at my tech guy that plays with me every session for combat. And he hates spiders. I do it all the time because I love to see him squirm.
Exactly right. And I had something interesting.
He's flipping me off right now.
Right. It's the trope of my player characters are on a ship, and someone is on the ship, and they're like an indentured servant, and they're paying off a debt, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was a young girl, maybe 15, 16 years old, who, as they were unloading the cargo from the ship, she was stealing the cargo. So they caught her and they put her on the ship to work off her debt, right? That's a trope, right? There's always somebody young on it. And so my modern 5e characters went through this whole thing about whether she's being sexually abused or whether she's assaulted or what kind of impact is they went totally deep on this. And one of the other players was like, she's just on the ship. And I'm like, well, you need to stop the game for a second, guys. We don't need to go this deep. I'm just playing on a trope. But it was very strange to me how modern players took a very common trope of a person who stole from somebody paying off their debt into this whole trauma situation of abuse. And I was like, my games are deep and heavy because of the world, but they're not like dealing with realistic politics or realistic traumas. And so if you want to hang your hat on being a they, them tiefling, great, more power to you. But the world is going to react differently. My world is very Tolkien and medieval. And I struggle a little bit with some of the modernism that occurs in 5th edition, 5 and 5.5, simply because people are people and humans are humans. And, what you bring to the table from the outside world is going to have an impact on what happens at the table, but what happens at the table isn't necessarily what's going on in the real world. And that was the one thing that kind of woke me up a little bit. And I was like, wait a second, maybe I've been a little more careful with this, because even though I don't see it so black and white, there are people coming to the table who are bringing that. And I think back in, the 70s and 80s, it was, your character died. There's this really cool story of a guy whose 10-year-old son was, and he was an elf, and the elf died horribly. And he was like, just roll up another character. So he said, Dad, and he put the word junior after his player character's name. So let's say the character's name was Melf the elf, Melf Jr., who's going to avenge his father. So it was just this understanding that your player character is going to die.
Right.
And I had somebody to say 5.5 is like the origin story for your superhero. And I don't necessarily buy into that being an origin story for a superhero as much as I buy into the idea of an ordinary person faced with extraordinary circumstances becoming something bigger and better and more impactful to the world. I love the Luke Skywalker story, right? A farm boy who goes to learn the Force and saves the world. That's what I see as a backstory. Nobody cares that Luke was a moisture farmer.
Right.
And I'm not talking about the whole Ben Kenobi stuff. I'm talking about seeing Star Wars in 1977. I knew from that moment where he's standing there looking at the twin suns, not knowing that his whole world is about to change because these droids entered his life. I want to play with my friends. I wanted to fly in my Skyhopper. Nobody cared about this immense backstory. That's what made Han Solo so cool, right? You didn't have a full backstory. He was just this really cool dude. And then we're so fixated on how we got to this point. And it's almost as if modern players want to have this huge, I was visited by gods. Well, your first level, how could you be? I had a character who wanted to play a Warforged in the Forgotten Realms. Okay. And he wanted to have all these gadgets. And I said, give me all of that stuff you want. And as you level up, you'll turn on more of your systems. So we compensated for this amazing backstory about him being a world slayer and a demon, all this. Your first level, dude, you have 6 hit points.
Yeah.
How can you be a demon slayer with 6 hit points? It just doesn't. And that's my mentality. I like session 0 for certain things. I like backstories for certain things, but don't make your backstory more interesting than my campaign.
Right. So what I do is I have very minimal session zeros, and I tell my players, and even the campaign that we're about to start now, don't have more than a paragraph or 2 of your backstory. See how the first few sessions go before to see how your character truly fits into that world. And then write out that 10-page manifesto if you want, seriously. Right. But I, as a DM, I'm going to open up and set the world in front of you before I consider your backstory. And it's not because I'm trying to be selfish. It's because I can't consider everybody's placement in a world that hasn't even been set up yet.
Exactly.
So what I do is I want to just know your race, your class, and your stats, and just, I'm from this part, I'm a this, I'm a that, and I believe in this deity, and I worship this. And it's seriously just a few lines. Because, and this is the fun part, if you don't let your players gather up and do a full session 0, the trope of we all meet in a tavern becomes probably the best session, because you guys will actually meet in a tavern and have a true discussion and express to each other and really role play into your characters. It's so perfectly set up to not do a session 0 where you know everything about everybody. Plus, if you know how everybody's character works, it kind of ruins the first battlefield that you get into, the first combat session you get into. You think somebody is a fighter and they're gonna action surge maybe, or do whatever a fighter does, and then all of a sudden they blast a spell across, or you hear a gong and they're casting Toll the Dead, and you're like, oh, we got a medium armor cleric. Cool, we have like a half frontliner cleric now, and it adds that surprise and tension to combat. And now they can start role playing in, well, how can we combo up during combat and do stuff? That's way better than having a session 0 and everybody trying to make sure they don't step on toes. And I talked about this in a series too, but if you have 3 barbarians and 2 wizards in a party, that's going to be a great campaign. It's going to be so much fun to have your 3, they could be 3 brothers of the same tribe, or even from 3 different tribes. And so you have that internal conflict, and then you have 2 wizards looking for mercenaries to help go out on this grand adventure to reestablish blah, 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 blah. And you can go off from there. So even if you pick the same classes, the only thing I would do as a DM, hearing that, I would probably tell the characters, hey, someone else is picking a similar class, but you guys have different subclasses, just letting you know, but still play what you're going to play. I still want to see how this plays out, because that's more real world than having a different class of everybody sitting at the table. It makes more sense. You would find a group of said kind of these in this area because they're gathered together for a certain reason, So that's why I've stepped back from session 0, or such a hard session 0.
Yeah, my structure is, let's review the mechanics basically. Yeah. And then at the end of session 0, there's always a quickie throwaway combat. so people can flex just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, I talked about this. West End Games, the Star Wars game from the 80s, the D6 version where you roll 3d6 plus 3 or whatever,
Okay.
Would start, their modules were all written in media res. So you had a script that you read before the module started. And so you knew what was happening with your characters, and you had just landed at the spaceport, and your contact, you just witnessed them get shot by the Imperial, or you're running down a hallway being chased by stormtroopers, and that's what the script is. And so you're thrown into the combat, and the assumption is you knew each other already, or there's camaraderie already, which can be dangerous, but I always liked using some of that because, you know, you've all been hired. I wrote some things that I never really actually implemented, where it was a tavern that you go to, and the tavern had, what did I call it? I forget what I called it, but you go to this tavern and you got quests from the tavern. And so it was almost like a silent auction where we need you to go do this, and people would sign their names to this list. And so the player characters would show up at the meeting point to go, because you all signed up for this quest. And so it's just different ways, because I mean, what are we doing meeting in a tavern? And if we are meeting in a tavern, everybody's going to get their own introduction by the DM. And that's part of the fun thing that I do too, is that the two players are talking to each other, and I say, somebody just walked through the bar that drew your attention. And I'll point to one of the player characters and say, describe yourself. What do you look like? And then they'll describe themselves, and I'll say, and they're doing this or they're doing that. And I give their character an opportunity to be unique. Are they an NPC or is this a player character? How does it work? So everybody gets a little mystery right off the bat, which is super fun to do sometimes. But the player characters I have 2 new players. I have 4 that have been with me for 5 years. And one of the newer players is the Fudger, and one of the other new players is trying to figure out. She has all these little books she printed out that have rule summaries, and she's a druid, and she casts all these. She's a summoned creature kind of druid,
right? And
so I'm bringing 12 wolves into this. I'm bringing 4 bears or 4 gorillas into it, and so it's just fun how she's learning and experiencing. But I just, once again, there's no right way. It's what makes sense for you. And I've never been a huge fan of this is right and this is wrong. And I usually say, well, that may be right for you, but it feels wrong for me. I'm not telling you can't do it, but don't say that I'm wrong for doing it the way I do it. And that applies to the game and the AI. And I mean, I like metal dice. Well, metal dice are wrong because in the 80s we didn't have come on, enough's enough, right? I'm in a metal phase, and so I'm because I love the way they sound.
Right.
I love that sound. Right. But there's just no, you want to follow the rules. Yes, you want to engage in playing the game, but I don't think your way or my way is better or worse. I think it just is.
Right.
And differences aren't good or bad. They're just different. And if you travel the world, and if you see different cultures and different people, you get an understanding that my way isn't always the right way, or my way may be the right way on my turf, on my soil, but completely insulting to someone from a different culture, different background. And if you're open-minded enough to be welcoming, everybody is welcome at my table, as long as we're not telling everybody the right and the wrong way of doing things. Don't phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Just go with the flow and let people be who they want to be. Right.
Right. And, I think you're doing something that a lot of other dungeon masters do. And dungeon masters are so hard on themselves. We really are. We're very critical of what we do because we really care about the story and what our players are experiencing. But here's the truth. And I heard one person say this. It was so simple. And it was such a long time ago. I forget who said it, but they just said, I think we're just all happy just to be sitting here playing. You're good. And I was just like, you know what? That's right. We're just happy. Most players are just so happy that there's a dungeon master at that point that's in their area, that they can sit down, play, and has taken the time to actually put a few hours, because we put in double the hours of what the campaign is. We're at the table, and then you can almost take the same amount of hours that you sit at a table you've applied to building that story, or at least reading the module that you're trying to run. Even if you're doing theater of the mind, you're still probably doing 2 to 3, 4 hours every week before your weekly session. And so in total, if you're only getting 12, you're doing maybe 24 hours of D&D stuff. and the players are only getting 12 hours. So those scant hours, because we have more hours that we're investing, the scant hours that they get are so important. So they're all just happy. I've never met a mad player when all the DMs show up at the game store. They're like, yes, there's a table and there's not 12 of us playing at one table. We can actually have, 2 tables of 6 people. That's the real truth. So I have become less hard on myself the last couple years because I know my players are just happy to just kind of be a part of that, which is nice. You just don't have to be so hard on yourself as a dungeon master. Yep.
It goes back to the reframing that I talked about a little earlier, is that when you say to yourself, I am doing this for me.
Yeah,
I'm doing this because I like it. I like stuff on the table. I like a detailed backstory. I like this NPC.
100%.
I'm not doing it. I mean, they're along for the ride. They're there because they keep coming back. That's your best compliment as a DM, right? Do your players keep coming back?
Yes.
If they keep showing up every single week, it's tough getting adults with lives together every Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
Oh my God. Scheduling is the real CR30 monster.
Exactly right.
It's scheduling.
But if they keep making time in their schedule and they keep showing up, that's your biggest compliment.
Yep.
And for me, I got to admit, when the phones come out and they start taking pictures of the stuff that's on the table, that's them telling me how awesome it is.
Yeah.
And so I do have a lot of players that play with different groups, and some of them are theater of the mind, some of them are flat mat with the water pens, the water mud.
All good.
That's
all of it's great.
I, as an adult, my kids are out of the house. They're all on their own. I have 3 successful daughters in the world.
Congratulations.
$1,000 a month.
I'm deep in the trenches right now. I have 2 right now.
It's $1,000 a month per kid. That $3,000 a month that I was paying for when my kids were home, dance lessons and food, and I need a new outfit for this event and art supply and that's discretionary income now. My income didn't go up. My income stayed the same, but the kids went away. My expenses went away, which allows me to afford the stuff that I do. But it's been a good talk, man.
This has
been a really good talk.
I think this is a great place to kind of end it, and how dungeon masters have been appreciated by players. So I just want to say I'm a big fan of yours. I love the video shows.
Thanks.
I love the miniatures. Whenever we get around to the new project and a new channel that we're starting, I will be putting this one up as one of the very first podcasts that go up, man. And I'll make sure to send you all the links and all the goodies that come with it. So
that's awesome. I would love to help in any way I can. And when some of this stuff comes up, I want to advertise the bejesus of it on my TikTok. I go live every Wednesday nights and Sunday. So I'm going live tonight. I'm going to talk about what we talked about here. I'm going to talk about some of the fights that I'm having with my resin printer, but big picture, this is my retirement. This is what I'm going to do until I die. Man. And as I have more time to do it, it's only going to get better. But for me, I love meeting cool people like you. I'm always blown away that you would reach out to me and say, Thomas, let's talk and because I provided value to you. I hope, and that's
a great talk. This was amazing. Yeah, 100%.
It's the coolest thing ever.
All right, bud.
You have never met in person, and I just have some really cool people that I've met online, and
thank you.
It's just really awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much.
All right, bud. Well, you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks. I'm going back to work. See you soon.
All right, have fun.
All right, bye.